creating work breakdown structure. When we started project management, we spoke about the triple constraint, the project triangle that's comprised of 4 major components. Can someone help remind us of what those 4 major components were? The 4 major components in the triple constraint or the project triangle. Can someone remind us? You could raise your hand if you want to give us a voice. Just raise your hand and then we'll unmute you. The components of the project triangle. Can someone remember that? The components of the project triangle. All right, please, Mr. Abraham, go ahead.
Okay, I think the components are scope.
All right.
Quality.
Okay.
Scope, quality, budget, and I've forgotten the 4th one.
Okay. So please go and find someone to help you with the 4th one. All right, thank you so much, sir. Sincere appreciations. Let's check the chat room. Someone said scope, cost, time, and quality. Another one says scope, time, budget, and quality. Scope, cost, time, and quality. Scope, time, budget, and quality. All right. So we agreed that there are 4 major components. We have the scope, we have the time or the schedule, we have the budget or the cost, and then we have the quality. So we have scope, time, cost, and quality. So since we started this class, we've been saying a whole lot of things. We've learned a whole lot of things, but today we'd like to look at the scope component. How do we create the scope? How do we come up with the work breakdown structure that can help us deliver to every project? So what we will principally do by the end of each of these sessions is that we'll provide you with templates, although we've already uploaded some templates before, but we'll provide you templates in the areas of not so that you can use them in time of need to develop each of the components that you want to develop. So quickly, let's look at what creating a WBS looks like. Now, by introduction, when it comes to planning a project, the work breakdown structure is one of the first things a project manager has to work on. Breaking down or breaking work into smaller tasks is a common productivity technique used to make the work more manageable and approachable. In this section, we'll explain what a work breakdown structure, WBS, how to create one, and give you access to WBS templates that you can use. Now, by definition, a work breakdown structure is a diagram that shows the connections between the objectives, measurable milestones, and deliverables, also referred to as the work packages or the tasks. Now, the main reason for a work breakdown structure is to make a project more manageable and quantifiable by breaking up the work into smaller tasks. So a work breakdown structure is simply more of having you have the project scope title, then you have the project phases, then on each of the project phases you have tasks. Now, if each of these tasks are bigger or might not be too easy to understand or comprehend, it is now the responsibility of the project manager to go further, breaking down those tasks into smaller bits, okay, into lower levels that can easily be understood and then easily implemented. All right. So a project, please, I want you to confirm that you can see my screen. If you can see my screen, please kindly type 22 in the chat room. If you can see my screen, I'm currently on definitions. All right, thank you. Thank you. So the WBS simply means breaking down the work into very small units that can easily be managed, right? Okay. Now we have also what we call the WBS dictionary, which is the formal project document that provides detailed description of key information of all elements in the work breakdown structure and must comply with the 100% true. 100% true simply means you have to include all that must be done and only what must be done in the project. That's the 100%. What must be done and only what must be done, all right? So the 100% rule is simple. That's the scope principle. The scope principle is include only what work has to be done, define what has to be done, and include only what work has to be done to achieve the deliverable in that project. That's the scope principle. The same scope principle follows in using the WBS, or the WBS dictionary. So the WBS dictionary tells us all we need to know about each of these tasks. In case they are not all that understandable, the WBS gives us further information. For instance, let's assume you are in this particular course now. Let's say a phase of this course is induction, right? And under induction, we say under induction, you have workshop. And someone doesn't really understand what all this workshop is all about. So we can create a work breakdown structure dictionary to give you all that you need to know about the workshop. So we now tell you, okay, the workshop is a 3 or 5 days seminar that will involve this, will involve that, and all of that. We give you all the breakdown, the complete information that you need to have on that task called workshop, under induction, under the whole professional development journey. All right? Okay. Now we have also what we call the WBS levels. The WBS levels are what determines the hierarchy of a WBS element. So in WBS, you have primarily, you have the scope statement, then you have the level 1. Dependent on the magnitude of the work you're doing, you could have level 2, you could have level 3. Now let's give a typical example of what level 1 is all about. You have the work statement. Okay, let's say getting a project management certification, that's your scope statement. And then under the scope statement, you have the level 1, that's the WBS level 1, defining the major tasks or the major phases or the major deliverables for that particular project. So I could say phase 1 could be look out for a professional body and register. Stage 2 could be attend your trainings. Stage 4 could be pass your exams. Stage 5 could be go for your inductions, and then stage 6 is get your certification. Those are the major phases. So that's level 1, right? Then you could have level 2. Level 2 will now give you a breakdown of the level 1. So I said level 1 is look out for or search for a professional development institution and register. Now under level 1, you could have level 2. Level 2 could mean use referrals to achieve that. Use a friend who has gone through a program to refer, use the internet or whatsoever. Now, when you have that, if that is your level 2, level 3 will now mean that you have to now come down to be more specific on who or what will be the criteria for choosing who will be the referral that will make you decide on the kind of professional body to go for. So that's the different levels. So it gives you the breakdown from a higher level to lower levels until you get to the point that there is nothing else to break down. Okay. All right. Then you have your control accounts. Your control accounts are used to group work packages and measure their status. They are used to control areas of the project scope. They have the project deliverables, which are the desired outcome of the project tasks and work packages. Tasks, your tasks make up your work packages and therefore the project scope. Your work packages are the lowest level of the WBS. They are the lowest level of the WBS. They are the lowest level of the WBS. So if you want to create WBS, first of all, you have to break it down into a phase. From a phase, you break it down into tasks. And then from the tasks, you have your WBS. Okay. Now, what are the benefits of having a WBS? Number 1, it visualizes the scope of the project, making it easier to do the planning It makes it easier to assign responsibilities accurately to the project team. It helps with identifying the project milestones and control points. It helps with estimating the time and cost for the project and allocate resources. It visualizes important parts of a project and help identify areas of risks. Now, it helps set clear timelines for the project and ensure that no work is duplicated or overlooked. Now, all of these things we are stating here are the benefits we see at the lowest level of the work. WBS breaks down the work to the low, or breaks down the project to the lowest level of the work. So when we say visualizes the scope of the project, making it easier to do the planning, that means we are seeing the work in its least form. Okay, we are seeing the work in its smallest form, from the highest form to the smallest form. Okay, and every other thing that follows it. All right. Now, what are the components of the WBS? You have your tasks, and you have your work packages, you have your deliverables, you have your WBS dictionary, you have your WBS levels, and then you have your control account. Now, some of the things here might be silent when you're creating a WBS. Some will come out very obvious, some will be silent. Not completely silent, but we don't create columns for them. For instance, if you're creating a WBS, primarily, you will see your control account first, or your code of account, where you see 1, 1.1, 1.2, that's defining the levels. So if you have 1, we could say this is level 1. If you go further to having 1.1, that means we're having level 2 of that. If we go say 1.1.1, we are breaking it down into much more levels. But that could be on what we call serial number, but ordinarily we call it codes of accounts. Okay, codes of account. Now, when you begin to have level 1, and then you have 1.1, your 1.1 may be the tasks or the task. Then you have 1.1.1. That one now is a work package. You have 1.1.2, 1.1.3. You're breaking your 1.1 into manageable units, breaking it into the smallest forms that the project can be carried out. Okay, so we will not have a column for work packages, but we'll have a column for tasks. Then under the tasks, you have the deliverables or the major milestones. Under the milestones, you have your tasks. Under the tasks, you have your work packages, right? Then you have your deliverables or the expected outcome for each of the levels, all right, that you're carrying out, all right? Then you have your WBS dictionary. Also, we might not, in the WBS itself, we might not have the WBS dictionary installed as we're going. If you're using an Excel, yes, you could create your WBS dictionary on components of the project that you think needs further explanation, right? You create hyperlinks on them. However, if you're using something like Microsoft Word, then you have to create your WBS dictionary as an appendix or glossary that will provide further information on what the work packages or the work tasks are. And then you have your WBS levels. I just mentioned that right now. A level, you have 1.1, and then you have you have level 1, then you have 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Then you have another level 2. Level 2, they have 2.1, 2.2, or 2.1.1, 2.2.2. All right, you have it in that dimension based on the magnitude of the work or the tasks involved in the work or the complexity of the project. All right, then you have your control account. Now, looking at the types of WBS, we have principally 2 types, although in some texts you see 3. According to PMI, we have 3, but I'm going to only discuss 2 here. We have the deliverable-based WBS. You have the phase-based. Then you have WBS by work package. Okay, you have WBS by work package, WBS by phase, and WBS by deliverable. If you're having a WBS by work package, it simply means you're going to break down that project to its smallest form to the smallest work package, right? If you're breaking it down by phase, that means you're breaking the project down to level 1 or maximally level 2. If you're breaking the work down based on the deliverable, you're looking more at the expected outcomes. And then you're breaking the work down based on the expected outcome. So the first one we have here is the deliverable-based work breakdown structure. Clearly demonstrate the relationship between the project deliverables and the scope. So you see example here, you have the construction of the house, and then you see the level 1. So it majorly focuses on the level 1, that's the phases. Not really the phases, where the deliverable is gotten, that's where it focuses on the deliverable rather. All right, so level 1, you have the internal work that need to be done. So all we expect there is that by the end of the day, the deliverables for internal should be completed. Number 2, what we are interested in is the foundation. Number 3, what we're interested in is the external work being done. And under it, we will now have the lower levels still under level 1. Okay, we are not giving the complete breakdown of the work. We just stated it level 1, level 2, level 1, then you have the sub-levels under each of them. Then you have the other one that's called the phase-based. It focuses on the phase. And whenever we talk about phase, we talk about the work, the major work that need to be done on that particular segment of the project, the major work that need to be done on that particular segment of the project. So it's had multiple phases, okay, multiple phases, and then multiple elements under the phases. The phase becomes the level 1. On the other one, the deliverable was considered as level 1, but this one, the phase becomes the level 1. For instance, you have the same construction of the house, then you have level 1 design, level 2 procurement, level 3 construction, level 4 inspections, and level 5 turnovers. So you see how this goes compared to this. When you look at this, you find that it is looking more at the deliverables, the internal work that need to be done, the foundation, and then the external. That's just principally what is. But this gives you more of a lengthened explanation of what the project will contain. Then if you were to look at it by WBS, then what it simply means that as you have design, they have 1.1 permits, then you may have to have 1.1.1 as maybe your 1.1.1 will be registrations with regulatory bodies, 1.1.2, get your certificate, 1.1.3, document your certificate. Then you have 1.2 drawings, 1.2.1, assemble your team for drawing, 1.2.2, assign work to each of the team members, 1.2.3, you keep breaking it down. That kind of WBS is now referred to as work, WBS by work package or work package based WBS. Now, do I have any question? If you understood these 3 levels of WBS, please kindly type 1. If you don't understand them, please kindly type 00. I'm seeing a question here. Said no diagram to illustrate the third one. Okay, so I said there are 3 of them, but I will only talk about 2. All right. The first one is WBS by the 2 I spoke about here, the WBS by deliverable and then WBS by phase. However, we'll have the third one that will have WBS by work package. So that is the one that we excluded in this class, but however, I explained it, right? Now, the WBS by work package, using this phase as a case, what it simply means is that instead of stopping at 1.1 as the last work package, you go further to breaking the 1.1 down. So 1.1 says permit. Then 1.1.1 could be identify all the permits to be gotten. Then number 2, get a compliance officer to register for the permits. Number 3, that's 1.1.3. So we are now breaking it down such that by the time we are done with all of the group of work packages under the permits, we could comfortably say we are done with the permit. Okay. Someone say, what do we call elements under each phase? Now, each of these elements, like you have 1.1, 1.2, we have them as the project WBS elements. You could also refer to them, although everything here is WBS elements anyway, but you could now refer to them as the tasks. So this 1.1 is an expected task to be done. However, under this task, we have another element that we now call the work package. So you have elements in the order of work packages, you have elements in the order of control accounts, like you have 1.1, 1.2. You have the WBS levels, like you have here this is level 1. Under the design procurement, this is level 1. And if you have level 2, that will be WBS level 2 to further give you information on what the project is all about. So everything you see in this breakdown, they are all elements of this WBS. So you have WBS level, you have the tasks, you have the work packages, and every other thing following it. Okay, Mr. Engineer Mohammed, I guess you understand that. Any other question for me? I hope I did not miss any question. Okay. Any other question for me? Please, if you have a question, if you have something to share, please feel free to raise your hand. If you wish that I continue, kindly type 22 in the chat room and then I'll proceed. Okay. Now, I will make a little digression, then I'll proceed. The little digression I will make is the simplest way to carry out a project is to make sure that the WBS is done appropriately. That's ensuring that there is effective breakdown of the project. In the same way, when we are planning for our own individual work, individual life, we need to use the approach of WBS, breaking down the project to the least manageable form. Okay. And permit me to share this experience. Maybe let me record it. There was a time I needed to raise some money for a particular project. And then that was actually to register my first business, my first company. And I needed about $1 million, like lump sum, $1 million. And then that $1 million, I developed my business plan, went to Diamond Bank. They didn't give me the money. They just kept moving me up and down. Then one of the days I came across this book by Robert, what do you call it? Mo Levitt. Okay, Mo Levitt. I will recommend that everyone get that book. Mo Levitt, it says executing strategies, breaking it down. So I started reading the book and I found that every big thing can be achieved through breaking it down and then doing it from the smaller portions. And then I went on to looking at that same project I needed $1 million about. That was around 2010, 2011. I went back to the same project and then began to break it down into smaller particles. First broke them down into phases and then broke it down into tasks. Then started breaking it down into smaller work packages. And then I got decisive on what I wanted to call a deliverable, right? And then I discovered that some of the things needed 1,000 naira, some needed 2,005, some needed 10,000. The maximum thing that I ever needed in that project was about 45,000 naira. And then I started working in bits. I started hosting some projects or some programs to generate each of this money according to the work packages that have been developed. So for the ones of 1,000 naira, I could easily develop those ones. I could easily get those ones. But for the 45,000 naira, I could remember then I had to organize a program. And the program, I wanted people to pay the minimum price, the minimum that they can ever pay. I wanted the program to be in such a way that nobody will ever reject it. Okay, and that program was how to set up your company online as far back as 2010. And we hosted that program. I traveled to Abuja to host that program in University of Nigeria, Nsukka. And then we had the hall filled up to the brim. And everyone that came just paid a token of 250. And before we left that venue, we raised, of course, we raised more than 100,000, okay? And with that, we were able to register the company, we were able to buy some of the stationaries, and we're able to buy some of the machineries needed. I can remember then we bought some extra laptops, we bought projectors, we bought projector screens, and then bought generator, and then we rented an office. But if I had waited for the bank to approve of my loan, obviously, if they approve it, I would obviously end up with debts that may overwhelm me. I will not be able to conclude on the project, my own personal project, and I won't be able to pay the money, and I may land in jail. So we can use WBS in our own personal life. There could be things that look overwhelming right now. For instance, we say your induction is 75,000 or 100,000 or 150. Perhaps you're looking at the 150 based on your category and say, how do I go about this? You could break it down, very simple. Break it down. There is no project that is too big to handle, okay? There is no project that is overly big that it cannot be handled. It's just for us to keep breaking it down to the point that we can easily, comfortably handle the work packages with ease, and then move from level 1 to level 2, level 2 to level 3, and then by the time you know it, we are done with the project, okay? The instance I gave, does it make any meaning to someone? Will it help you in working around with your own project? If it will, kindly type 11. If this example will help you, type 11. If it will not, please, you can share your own too. Now, how do we create WBS? How do we create WBS? Number one, establish the scope. Of course, we know that WBS is drafted from the scope, right? WBS is a component of the scope, right? So get your scope, define your scope. Remember, scope simply tells you what has to be done and only the work that needs to be done to get the deliverable. That's all. What needs to be done and only what needs to be done. Okay? In most cases, we say what needs to be done and what need not to be done. So differentiate the two so that when you're moving from what needs to be done to going to what needs not to be done, you can call yourself to order through your monitoring and evaluation framework. Okay, so define your scope, establish your scope. What is the work about? Is it 2-bedroom flat you're doing? Is it 300-man wedding you're doing? Is it 200-man birthday party you're doing? Is it 500 youth empowerment project you're doing? Is it 4 community constituency project you're doing? Is it 500 or 200 SME project you're doing? So you have to define it exactly. Okay, you say training project on finance management for 300 SMEs in 12 local governments, maybe in Abuja. No, Abuja doesn't have a 12 local government. The 12 local governments in Kano. Where that means we are not taking all the 52 local governments in Kano, we are just restricting ourselves to 12, right? So when you start seeing yourself getting to 13, you can call yourself to order and say, no, I'm exceeding the scope of the work. I'm moving beyond the boundaries of the work, all right? Then as soon as you establish the scope, the next one is for you to actually break down your work into phases first. I think the next thing is to break it down into phases. Then for each of the phases, you can now establish all your project deliverables. For each of the phases, you establish your deliverables. Now, from each of your deliverables, you create the project tasks for each of those deliverables, okay? And then I'll prefer you create your work packages first, and then have your WBS, and then at the end of the day, we would have said you are done with your WBS, okay? Thank you. Writing create WBS here is another pathology. So the first thing is establish your scope. Number 2 is break down the work into phases. Then number 3 is identify the deliverables on each of the phases, then establish the tasks or create the tasks that need to be done on each of the phases to give you the deliverables. Now establish the work packages for each of those, the work packages for each of those tasks, and then have your work WBS dictionary. By creating your work packages, you're automatically creating your WBS levels. In fact, by creating your phases, and then breaking them down into tasks, and then creating the work packages of what you've already exemplified the WBS levels. Okay, so once again, what do you do? What is the scope of the project? What are the phases in the project? What are the deliverables in each of the phases? What are our major milestones? Now, what are the tasks needed to complete the phases? Then what are the work packages in each of the tasks? And then at the end of the day, create your WBS dictionary to further give information on the elements of the WBS. And then by the end, we say your WBS is done and dusted. Do I have any question here? Any question for me here? If there's any question for me, please feel free, ask, raise your hand, or put it in the chat room. So that I can get that. Okay, so if there is no question, let me quickly share this okay. Although this is not a full-blown WBS, but it will give us a little information of what the WBS will look like. So you could use this template. Let me share the template. You could use this template to rework your WBS. Please, if you could see the template on my screen, project task list, kindly type 55 in the chat room. If you could see the template, please kindly type 55 in the chat room. All right. So with this template, you will notice that there are some certain things missing here, but you could fix them yourself. For instance, the project title or the project scope statement is not defined. So you could replace this project task list with your project scope statement, and you write it big as you can. All right, then you have the project start, your project start date, and then you have other information provided here. Then this is where I'm much more concerned under the tasks. That's where I'm much more, that's where you create your WBS, right? So all the project titles, you could change them, substitute them with project phases or milestones, depending on what you call them. You could substitute them with phases. Okay. You could substitute them with phases. And then the place you see task 1, you have your task 1. Then if you want to further add maybe you have 1.1, 1.2, all you need to do is to create additional information or create additional columns to this. Okay, you create additional columns either below or above, dependent on what you want. I want to create column below, so let me, so I have task 1, and I want to create another level, so I could have task 1.1. Now, if I have another level I will also want to create, then I could add another. All of these are have task. So let's assume I have task 1.1.1. All right, so I keep breaking it down till I get to what I want exactly. Then I'll move to the next task and break it down to either a work package, WBS based, or phase based, or deliverable based, depending on what I want. Now, if I want to make it a phase based, if it is a phase based, then this is just enough for me. I don't need to add any other level, right? This is just enough for me. If I want to make it a deliverable base, so instead of talking about project phases, I will now talk about project milestones. Okay, I will talk about that's the major deliverables to be gotten in each of the phases. I will discuss, or I will give it a project milestone rather than a project phase. Okay, so each of these can be reworked to help you get what you want. And I believe we've sent a copy of this project task list before, so you could rework it. And then on reworking it, you have access to defining who owns the project. If you want to use this also to now create your schedule, all right? If you look at it, it's more of a schedule already. Now, if you want to use this to create your schedule, now instead of talking about project owners, you could talk about team members, assigned team members, members assigned to the project or to the task, or the human resources assigned. You could also change it as HR assigned. You could have it also as HR assigned or human resources assigned. So this will tell you who is taking care of each of the tasks. Okay, each of the tasks. Remember, when you are assigning resources, you assign resources to tasks. If the task is further broken down into work packages, if you want to assign to work packages, then you need not to assign to tasks again. Okay, this is what I mean. This project milestone, for instance, to achieve this milestone, these tasks need to be done. So I don't need to assign another resource to this phase. Rather, I will assign resources to the tasks so that by the time they are done with the tasks, we would have achieved the milestone or the phase. Now, if I have to now create further levels of the project, maybe I have 1.1, 1.1.1, 1.1.1.2. Okay, so let's assume I have task 1.1, and then I have, let's assume I have task 1.2, and then task 1.3. Now, instead of assigning resources to task 1, I will now assign the resources to these particular ones here. I will assign resources to 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, knowing fully well that by the time 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 is done, I would have achieved task 1. That's if I want to further break it down to a WBS by work package. All right. If it's only by phase, then I need not to bother myself. This is just enough. So I just assign resources to this, tasks, and after these tasks are done, this milestone will be achieved. I do the same thing here. Okay, so I do the same thing here. I do the same thing here. Now, if you have multiple phases beyond 3, why not? You go ahead and create your phases and then do the needful. Okay. If you have multiple phases, you create the phases and then do the needful. All right. Now, this is just a template of how you could create your WBS using an Excel. This template is already in the Google Classroom. However, we'll still re-upload it. Now, do I have any question here? Because as it were, we are done with this particular section. Do I have any question here? If you are given this template, can you maneuver it? Can you use it to try to see what you can do? Any question, any issue of concern? Question. Comment. Am I permitted to proceed? Am I permitted to proceed? Okay. So since you say yes, who am I not to obey you? So let's proceed then. Now, going back to my slide. So we've gone through the WBS. Since there is no question for me, that will be all for now. Now, my question once again is, with this template, will you have a challenge developing a complete WBS for your own group project or personal project or company project? Will you have any challenge with that? Will anyone have any challenge with that? Okay, so if there is no question, we then move on to the next class.